Vladimir Tarasenko absolutely kills it in his first game as a New York Ranger. The Rangers take down the first place Seattle Kraken 6-3 on Friday night. And then Artemi Panarin goes off for not one, not two, not three, but 4 goals against the first place Carolina Hurricanes on the second game of a back-to-back. The Rangers win that game 6-2. We've also got some controversy, so to speak, with Vitali Kravtsov being a healthy scratch in the second of those 2 games in favor of Jake Leschyshyn. So I got to talk about all that and a whole bunch more on tonight's episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 770 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. So obviously we got a ton to do on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers. I mean, what else is new? You know, there's always a lot of highs and lows and always something to talk about when you're talking about the New York Rangers. But I figure, we'll start today's show by talking about the first of the 2 games of the back-to-back on Friday and Saturday. That was, of course, a 6-3 home victory against the Seattle Kraken for the New York Rangers. And of course, let's not bury the headline here. The big storyline coming into that game was the debut of Vladimir Tarasenko after the Rangers and Blues completed a trade, which sent Tarasenko to New York for what I believed was a very reasonable package. If you want my thoughts on the trade itself, just go back and check our most recent episode. Went into that in great detail. But as for this game, Vladimir Tarasenko to begin with, I mean, wearing the Ranger jersey, it just looked right. Rocking the blue, and it just it looked like a fit right away. And he was out there with Mikola and Artemi Panarin. They kind of super stacked the top line, or at least they did in the game against the Kraken. They shuffled the deck against the Canes, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But of course, Tarasenko here scores a goal. His first goal as a New York Ranger. Scored just .249 into his New York Ranger career. You got Panarin intercepting a pass. The Kraken turned over the puck in the neutral zone. Panarin goes up the right side, centers it for Tarasenko, and Tarasenko tips it into the net, gives the Rangers a 1-0 lead. And, overall, like I said, I thought it was a solid debut. It wasn't just the goal, but, that line was pretty much buzzing all night. I thought the kid line had a fantastic night against the Seattle Kraken. Rangers pretty much took care of business, got a little bit dicey in the third period, but as for Tarasenko himself, again, a really strong start. He's got to be at least somewhat nervous. I mean, 11 years with the St. Louis Blues, won a Stanley Cup there, has been through a lot of ups and downs with that franchise, but comes right in, and the fans were really excited. They wanted to see him play, and I thought it was a smart decision to have that line start the game. I mean, why wouldn't you want to start a line that's Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, and Vladimir Tarasenko? But when somebody's making his debut, I think it makes all the more sense just to get him out there, get him going, and not have him sitting on the bench too long and thinking about it. But yeah, Tarasenko was great. Scored the goal. He was also a +1. 2 shots on goal in that game, 1 hit, 2 block shots, 13:58 of ice time, and 1 minute and 28 seconds of power play time. And yeah, like I said, that first period of that game against the Kraken, it looked like the Rangers were just shot out of a cannon. One of the absolute best periods that I think they've played all season. Didn't quite stay at that level for the entire game, and we'll get to that in due time here. But like I said, very, very strong start for Tarasenko. Tarasenko against the Canes, a little bit quieter. Didn't really notice him a whole lot in this game that just concluded here. Did not have any points. He was an even plus-minus. Had 2 hits. 13:25 of ice time, and just like I said, not quite as noticeable in this game against the Canes as he was in this game against the Kraken, but that's okay. Obviously, still getting used to his new team, his new teammates, his new surroundings, all that good stuff, and I think Tarasenko is going to do a heck of a job and pay big-time dividends for this New York Ranger team down the stretch here. Also wanted to talk about Mikola a little bit because, obviously he was I don't want to say a throw-in because that almost sounds insulting, but he was, we'll call it the second piece of that trade with the St. Louis Blues. And, something that a lot of people are going to fixate on for sure in that game against the Kraken was the fact that Mikola ended up taking 3 penalties in that game. One was total nonsense. I mean, a lot of times with penalties, it's a little bit subjective, right? Shades of gray as opposed to black and white. But this one was the exception to that. One of his penalties, the third one to be exact, was just not a penalty because he was trying to clear the puck. It went off the stick of one of his opponents and then went out of play. They still called him for delay of game. One of the other ones, hooking penalty, a little bit ticky-tack, probably could have gone either way as well. But obviously, look, he doesn't want to be taking 3 penalties in any game, much less his debut with the New York Rangers. In that game, he was a -1, 1 shot on goal, 4 hits, 1 blocked shot, and had 14:04 of ice time, which was the fewest of all Ranger defensemen. I thought in the first game, him and Braden Schneider were struggling a little bit to get on the same page. And of course, part of that is caused by the Seattle Kraken because it's just a relentless team. I didn't think they were hitting that much early in the game, but they picked it up in that department as the game went on, and they forechecked like their heads are on fire. So there were a couple of different instances where I thought Schneider as well as Mikola, when they were on the ice, they kind of got pinned in their own zone a little bit. They hung in there. I mean, again, I think, the chemistry will come with time. Braden Schneider, very early in his NHL career here, has already shown that he can go out there and play with just about anybody. So I'm sure they'll find it sooner rather than later. And honestly, I thought in the game against the Kraken, they pretty much did find it. They looked a lot better. I thought Mikola looked a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more comfortable. I mean, like I said, same thing with Tarasenko. You get traded, I mean, your head has to be spinning at least a little bit. And, Mikola hasn't been in the league as long. I believe this is his 4th season, or at least part of his 4th season. And so, but he's played all those games with the St. Louis Blues. He's played his whole career there. That's the team that drafted him, and now he heads to New York. But yeah, the second game, like I said, I thought it was a lot better for Mikola, and you could even throw Schneider in there as well. Both of them were a +2. Mikola had 1 blocked shot, 17:48 of ice time. So his time on the ice increased by 3:44. So, pretty significant difference from one game to the next there. It was still the fewest of any of the New York Ranger defensemen, but that's also to be expected. I mean, they don't envision Mikola leading the Rangers in ice time on any given night. I think that's pretty much common sense. And I'm going to be very curious to see going forward what happens with Ben Harpur. It seems like for sure the Rangers look at Mikola as an upgrade there, and that's all well and good. I'm just very curious to see if Harpur will still mix into the lineup from time to time, or if it's a situation where Mikola is going to be the 6th defenseman going forward, and Harpur will be the healthy scratch, and they'll just put him out there in the case of an injury or something along those lines. But I'm very curious to see how the games are distributed between those two. Right now, though, it certainly seems like Mikola has the inside track. The only thing that really bothered me about the Kraken game is that the Rangers just didn't close with the authority that they could have. They were up 5-1 in the third period, had a shorthanded opportunity, could have made it 6-1. Instead, the Kraken get one back, and then 22 seconds after that, they get another one back. So now, instead of it possibly being 6-1, it's 5-3, and there's still about 12 minutes to go. So that was a little bit disappointing, and obviously we had to sweat it out a little bit, more than we would have liked. Obviously, the Rangers ended up getting the win there, but a couple of times in this game where a goal was scored and then the Kraken scored in the following shift. That happened twice. The first time was a Ranger goal. Kraken got one back to make it 4-1. The second time was the Kraken scoring 2 goals in, I believe it was like 22 seconds. So not ideal there, but they did enough to obviously get the win, and obviously, stuffed the score sheet. Several players stuffed the score sheet in that game. Igor Shesterkin in that game stopped 26 of 29 shots, got the win. Igor quietly has scuffled a little bit recently. I thought all 3 of the goals that he allowed in that game were at least somewhat preventable. He was not able to do it. And I think Igor will be just fine, just going through a little bit of a downswing. Nothing too noticeable because the Rangers are winning. And it's not like he's not making good saves from time to time. I mean, he certainly is. But with Igor, he set the bar just so impossibly high last year that I think that we all expect him to just be an absolute monster every single night. And like I said, I think he'll get back to that when it really counts, and he'll eventually come out of what we can call maybe a little bit of a mini slump right now. Something else that I want to highlight from that game, Rangers scored on the power play, and just a beautiful behind-the-back pass from Kreider to Mika Zibanejad. I mean, I just had to kind of include that because it was that good, kind of a no-look behind-the-back pass. But it leads me to a bigger point, which is that the Rangers in these 2 games combined went 3 for 4 on the power play. And this is a unit that was like 3 for 30 before that. So you go from 3 for 30 to 3 for 4. That's quite the instantaneous turnaround there. And obviously, you hope that they can keep it up. And perhaps even more importantly, the Ranger PK, they've been on point recently. Not just these 2 games, but really coming out of the All-Star break. These 2 games combined, though, the Ranger PK killed off 6 of 7 opportunities for the Kraken and the Canes combined. So that was big there, obviously. They had a really big kill against the Canes in this game tonight when they were up 3-2, and Panarin had taken a penalty. So that was big time right there. Allowed them to keep the lead and eventually go on to extend that lead and ultimately win 6-2. The other thing I have to talk about with the power play, too, is they've shuffled the deck a little bit, finally. I wasn't sure they would ever do this, but, they acquired Tarasenko, and I think some of us thought that maybe he'll go right to the top unit. Instead, they put Filipino there. They drop Vincent Trocheck down to the second unit, so the top unit is the usual 4 players plus Hedl instead of Trocheck, and the second unit now is Trocheck, Tarasenko, Kakko, Lafreniere, and Miller. So we may have the perfect power play units right now. I mean, you can always nitpick a little bit. The Rangers can always tinker with it from time to time, but that's pretty good. I think those are probably the 10 players that I would go with when it comes to the man advantage. And also, one last note from this game against the Kraken, Ryan Lindgren, his first goal of the season, an empty netter. His teammates were absolutely ecstatic, so that was obviously really nice to see that happen. Hardworking player, heart and soul of this team, and overdue for a goal this year. I mean, not that he's going to score a ton of goals, but I would have expected him to have one by now, and shoots it down the ice, gets the empty netter, seals the win for the New York Rangers. But we're just getting warmed up here. Want to shift our attention to the game against the Carolina Hurricanes. We got to talk about Artemi Panarin kind of getting demoted, and then I think getting mad about it, and just going on an absolute tear the rest of that game, scoring 4 goals and leading the Rangers to a 6-2 win against the Carolina Hurricanes. We're going to talk about that. And like I said, we're also going to talk about the controversial decision by Gallant to make Vitali Kravtsov a healthy scratch. And we're going to get to all that stuff in just a second. But first, just got to let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I use Athletic Greens literally every day. I started taking it because I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great, and I wanted to see what all the hype was about. Now I've been on it for about 9 months, and I love it. Doesn't taste like it's super healthy. It has kind of a mild tropical taste that I actually look forward to each morning. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It's lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, so we just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And so obviously Saturday night, the Rangers follow up a obviously very nice win against the Kraken, 6-3 in Vladimir Tarasenko's debut with you can't say that it was not a great win because they end up winning this game 6-2. It's funny. Can you win a game 6-2 while being outplayed for the majority of the game? I think the answer is a yes, because the Rangers, after 2 periods in this one, I thought they were pretty fortunate to head into the second intermission tied with the Canes. The second period was basically a disaster. The Rangers were back on their heels. The entire second period was played in the Rangers zone. Rangers couldn't get through the neutral zone. They couldn't complete a pass. Halak was under tremendous fire, and he was, again, one of the big reasons why the Rangers won the game. And from your backup goalie, sometimes you're just looking for him to give the Rangers a chance. As I've said recently, though, Jaroslav Halak, who, by the way, just won his 7th straight game for the Rangers, he is doing more than just giving them a chance. He is oftentimes one of the biggest reasons why they won. And I would say in this game, either him or Panarin, one or the other, they were the biggest reason why the Rangers won this game. So, obviously great stuff from Jaroslav Halak. We will get to him in greater detail in just a second here, but I don't think we can go a second longer here without talking about Panarin with the hat trick +1. He also had an assist for what that's worth. But something that was crazy about this, other than the fact that he scored 4 goals, is the fact that he didn't have any goals until just 2:11 remained in the second period. So he went off for 4 goals in the final 22-11 of this game. Pretty impressive stuff, and only a handful of players in this league that can pull that off. But the whole thing was sort of sparked by, or seemed to be sparked by, a demotion because, the Rangers, the first game that they had Tarasenko, they go with the super stacked top line left to right of Panarin, Mika, and Tarasenko. In this game, Rangers, weren't really getting anything going. Panarin had a couple too many turnovers, I think, for Jurgelant's liking. I'm looking at the stats right here. Apparently, he was only credited or discredited, however you want to look at it, with one giveaway. But, a couple passes to nobody that just didn't really work. But hey, he ends up with a 5-point night here. And I honestly think that when Panarin was demoted, it seemed to kind of light a fire under him a little bit, because after his first goal, I was watching him on the bench, and he looked pretty mad because him and Vladimir Tarasenko are really close. They've been friends for a long time. I'm not sure, I saw something where they were on the same World Juniors team, obviously a long time ago. And Tarasenko kind of took Panarin under his wing a little bit. I'm not sure if that's where they initially met, but it sounds like they really hit it off there, and they've been pretty good friends ever since. I saw something where, Drury actually talked to Artemi Panarin before pulling the trigger on the trade for Vladimir Tarasenko. So obviously, he got Panarin's thoughts on that and clearly values Panarin's opinion. But yeah, obviously the two of them are close, and I think Panarin was really looking forward to the chance of playing with his buddy on the Ranger top line. You got Mika Zibanejad out there too, so obviously, that line can do some pretty awesome things. The way this game wrapped up, I'm not so sure they're going to be back together for the next game, but with the way the Rangers change lines so often, they'll eventually work their way back to that. I'm sure Panarin will get another chance with Tarasenko at some point this season. We'll just have to see when. But as for these goals, like I said, the first one didn't occur until just 2:11 remained in the second period. You got Trocheck setting up Panarin for the goal. When Panarin got demoted, he dropped from the top line down to the second line, so he was back with Trocheck, and Jimmy Vesey was out there on the right wing. And Vesey set this whole thing up. Vesey's played great for the Rangers. He was really strong, really in both games, but especially this game against the Canes here. He forces a turnover in the neutral zone, immediately passes up to Vincent Trocheck into the attacking zone. You got Trocheck passing to his right to Artemi Panarin, and Panarin shoots and scores. That was the first shot on goal in more than 12 minutes for the New York Rangers, and it tied the game at 2-2, a period that was completely dominated by the Canes. I remember when this happened, I'm watching the second period, and the Rangers are getting killed, and they were up 1-0, now they're down 2-1. I was thinking, man, we just got to get to the locker room down 2-1, at least give ourselves a chance. But obviously, Panarin had other ideas here, and he scored. And like I said, he kind of looked mad on the bench, when he got back there. It was kind of like a facial expression that I'm not used to seeing Panarin have. And, I'm not going to be like the guy that sits here and analyzes body language and facial expressions and everything, but it was somewhat noticeable. Panarin's always kind of that happy-go-lucky player. He's always got a smile on his face, always having fun. He looked like he was mad, and like I said, I think it's because he wanted more of a chance to play with Tarasenko, but obviously he got dropped, and it worked out because then we're into the third period now. Panarin scores again, his second goal of the night, and the Rangers go up 3-2. And again, this goal started because somebody on the Rangers forced a turnover. In this case, it was Vincent Trocheck. He was chasing the puck into the corner, stole it, got it to Braden Schneider. Schneider's on the right side, takes a shot. It is saved and turned aside. Panarin and Trocheck both got to the rebound. I thought initially it might have been Trocheck, but it was indeed Panarin who just swept the puck into the net and scored the goal there. And something else of note, Panarin, 4 goals in this game, had just 1 goal in his previous 13 games before this one. So obviously he broke out of his goal-scoring slump in a big way here. Then he completes the hat trick in the third period. This put the Rangers up 4-2. So I'm actually just realizing now that it was actually a natural hat trick here for Artemi Panarin. I didn't initially realize that, but so Panarin gets a breakaway kind of out of nowhere. Canes were being very aggressive on the forecheck, looking for the equalizer. Miller knocked his guy off the puck. The puck goes ahead to Artemi Panarin. Panarin flies up the left side on the breakaway, goes to his forehand and scores. And it's funny because as nasty as Panarin is in the shootout, breakaways have not really been his strength this season. He's been stopped on far more often than he's scored. But obviously, he converts here. And like I said, he had that fire lit under him. And here you go. Natural hat trick. Rangers up 4-2 at that point. You get a Kakko empty netter that makes it 5-2. And then the fourth goal of the game for the Rangers. The Canes turn it over. Vesey gets it to Panarin in front of the Canes net. This is with about a minute remaining or so. Panarin gets the puck, turns around, whips it into the net, and scores. no joke here. When Panarin, when I saw where he was and where I saw that he had the puck, and obviously he's going to turn and shoot here, as he was doing this, I said 4. I just had a feeling he was going to turn and put that puck in the net, and indeed he did that. 6-2, Rangers. Again, the final score is kind of deceiving because the Rangers, I mean, props to them for having such an awesome third period. Obviously a staple of what the Rangers did last year, what they're starting to do this year, and something that really good teams do. They step it up and they play at their best in the third period. And the Rangers did that here. But yeah, the final score a little bit deceiving. It's not like this was an easy win for the Rangers by any stretch, or that they dominated the entire 60 minutes. But we'll take it. It's a win over a first-place team on the road, 6-2. And you get to conclude the night with "Let's go Ranger" chants on the road. It's always great to see that. And, there's Ranger fans everywhere, but this is one of the arenas where the fans really seem to invade and really give the Rangers a little bit of an edge, I would think, because it's not a true away game when half the people there, more than half, it seems like, are actually cheering for you. So good stuff there. That was the Rangers' first trip there since Game 7 last year. We know that went well for the Rangers as well. So yeah, awesome stuff there by Artemi Panarin, and we're going to keep everything rolling here in just a second. But first, I just got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that is even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so we'll keep everything rolling right along here. I think something that I got to get to here, and this is one of those things, honestly, it could probably lead a normal episode, but there's so much to talk about here with the trade of Tarasenko, or the trade for Tarasenko. Artemi Panarin just going off with 4 goals. So now we work our way, finally, to Vitali Kravtsov here. He is a healthy scratch. I mean, he got to play in the game against the Kraken, and I thought he looked all right. I mean, nothing earth-shattering, but, had a couple of nice passes, I thought. Puck handled, seemed to play with a lot of confidence, and for one reason or another, just not out there for the game against the Canes. And, it seems like the Rangers a lot of times will be hesitant to change the lineup after a win, but apparently that does not apply to Vitali Kravtsov. I just don't think this move makes any sense. And I'm somebody that typically will back up Gerard Gallant because I think some of the hate he gets on social media is just obscene. I mean, there are people that are incapable of saying anything nice about him. And does he have his flaws? Sure. Is he perfect? Absolutely not. Does he occasionally do things that make me scratch my head a little bit? Yes. But the bottom line is, this man, to make a long story short, this is a whole nother topic for another day. This man came in, took control of a team that was in complete turmoil. I mean, think about the last season that the Rangers had before Gallant had here. You had all the drama with Tony DeAngelo and Alex Georgiev. You had, this wasn't really anybody's fault, but you had Artemi Panarin, that political hit piece was out on him, so he had to miss a good chunk of the season. You had at the end of the year, everything with Tom Wilson and everybody getting fired. Gerard Gallant comes in here, takes a rebuilding team, and immediately turns them into a Stanley Cup contender, but he deserves no credit whatsoever. But yeah, there are things you can nitpick from time to time, the constant line changes, that certainly comes to mind pretty quickly. And I think certainly this decision here, you got Vitali Kravtsov, somebody that this organization and the decision makers that did this aren't really here anymore, but this organization nevertheless drafted him number 9 overall. And you've got a situation here where you're making him a healthy scratch for Jake Leschyshyn. Now, to begin with, I'd like to see Kravtsov play, regardless of who's going in his place, but let's look at what Jake Leschyshyn has done pretty much through his whole NHL career and specifically this season, okay? So this is the guy that the number 9 overall pick has to come out of the lineup for. So Leschyshyn, after this game tonight, has played 31 games this season, 22 with Vegas, 9 with the Rangers. He has 0 points in 31 games. And consider this as well. The Knights basically gave up on Jake Leschyshyn and just placed him on waivers. They didn't even try to trade him, or maybe they did try to trade him and they just couldn't find any takers. But, honestly, you couldn't trade this guy for like a 5th-round draft pick, a 6th-round draft, something. Instead, no, they just waive him. Maybe they want to reassign him to the AHL, but obviously if you put him on waivers, you're taking the risk that somebody's going to claim him. The Rangers ended up claiming him. This is somebody that they waived despite taking him number 62 overall back in 2017. He was the final pick of the 2nd round that season. He's still just 23 years old, and apparently the Knights had seen enough, and they just didn't want him there anymore. And the Knights are a good team. You would think that they might be patient with one of their young players, although maybe not. That might actually be the reason why. They have designs on winning the Cup this year, and they just don't think he can do enough to help them. But Leschyshyn in his career, and again, this is the guy that's playing over Vitali Kravtsov, has 6 points in 72 games. He gets 1 point every 12 games that he plays, and that's the guy that apparently needs to be in the lineup. Gallant was talking about it before the game, said Kravtsov didn't do enough. They wanted to go with a different look or something along those lines. I didn't really get it at all. But, to kind of try to make some sense out of this, Kravtsov, I think, remains. I did an episode about this not too long ago. We did the top 5 most likely Rangers to be traded, and Blay was on that list. He ended up getting traded, but I had Kravtsov at number 1, and I think that's still the case. It could be a situation where a Vitali Kravtsov trade is somewhat imminent. The Rangers might feel like, they're going to be making a deal. We could get news later tonight that Kravtsov has been traded. We could get news tomorrow, whenever it might be. And obviously, if that's the case, if you're going to trade him, on one hand, you might think like, well, showcase him. On the other hand, he's played enough games this year. These teams have seen him in action at the NHL level, enough to have some kind of an idea of, what he brings to the table. And so, if you do feel like you're right about to trade him, or you're going to trade him before the deadline at the very least, then you certainly don't want him to get injured and, nix the entire thing. So I get the feeling Kravtsov is on his last legs with the Rangers. And keep in mind, as I mentioned a second ago, Jeff Gorton, JD, the 2 biggest voices in the Ranger room on draft night, or at least that's how it used to be, that was their guy. They drafted Kravtsov. Kravtsov has twice quit on this franchise. We know that Drury was never really all that fond of the pick. Gallant tried to call him last year when Kravtsov walked out. Kravtsov wouldn't have it. He wouldn't come back to the team. So it might be possible that he just burned too many bridges, and, guys like Drury, guys like Gallant, everybody's saying all the right things, and everybody's kind of playing nice in the sandbox, so to speak, but I've said this multiple times. Vitali Kravtsov is not going to be a Ranger for life. I think that's pretty obvious at this point, and, it just kind of feels like, he really is on his last legs with this team. I mentioned not too long ago, when Gauthier and Kravtsov were both healthy scratches, that it's possible that one of them, at least one of them, had played his last game as a New York Ranger. Now, that didn't end up being the case because they were both on the ice. They were both in the lineup for the game against the Kraken. But regardless, it could be just one extra game that Kravtsov ends up playing, since I said that. It's possible that we do not see Kravtsov back with the Rangers in the lineup at any point here, and he ends up getting traded. As far as what you could get for him, 2nd-round draft pick. I saw that floated out there on social media as an idea. If I can get a 2nd-rounder for Kravtsov, based on how the Rangers are using him right now, and again, the fact that you have so many young players that are going to need new contracts, Kravtsov is not very high on the list of priorities. He's just not going to be here that much longer. If I can get a 2nd-round pick for him, I'm doing that in about 2 seconds. And consider this. If the Rangers trade Kravtsov sooner rather than later, and they're able to get a 2nd-rounder, and we could debate that. There might be people hearing this that say you're not getting a 2nd-rounder for Kravtsov. That might be entirely possible. But if you can pull that off and get a 2nd-rounder, hey, all it takes is one of the other 31 teams to say yes, right? And you can maybe get yourself a 2nd-rounder. Might be wishful thinking on my part, but it might also be doable. But if that happens, the Rangers then have a little bit more ammo as far as what they want to do at or near the trade deadline for this last couple of weeks that remain here, because now you acquire a second-round draft pick. I mean, you could use that second-round draft pick next year, or you can immediately trade that second-round draft pick for, another piece, something else that you're looking for before the trade deadline, comes and goes this season. But we'll see. A lot of hypotheticals there, but the long and short of it is that, Kravtsov, it just feels like his time with the Rangers is probably running out, and that might be the best thing for all parties, really, because it feels like Drury and Gallant don't really have any time for him, and it feels like, Kravtsov probably wants to change the scenery as well. A lot's happened between, Kravtsov and the Ranger organization, and at some point, the clock's going to strike midnight here. The only other thing I wanted to really get into here was the performance from Jaroslav Halak, his 7th straight win, as I mentioned. He stops 27 of 29 shots in this game, and something else that I've noticed is he's starting to beat some pretty good teams. Obviously the Canes were in first place in the Metro Division. They're still in first place in the Metro Division even after this loss. Canes had gone 9-0-1 in their last 10 games before this one, so the Rangers continue their streak-busting tendencies. They've beaten some teams that have been on some really lengthy winning streaks this season, and Jaroslav Halak is responsible for that. Like I said, not just helping the Rangers win or giving them a chance. No, the biggest reason why the Rangers won this game, along with Artemi Panarin. But, he beats the first place Canes in this one. His last start before this one, he beat the Flames. And the Flames, obviously, they're teetering playoff team, non-playoff team. There's better teams than them in the league, at least if you go by record. But that game was absolutely insane, and Halak hung in there and obviously got the win. And before that, Halak, right before the break there, sent the Rangers into the break on a positive note, beating the Vegas Golden Knights, who were in first place at the time as well. So obviously, Halak stepping it up, getting the job done. And what was crazy is the way this game started, because, 30 seconds into the game, Svechnikov gets a chance in deep. Halak smothers it. Teravainen had a chance in deep just after this. Svechnikov had a shot that went off the glove of Jaroslav Halak. Rangers were really getting pinned back early in this game. There was a wild scramble in front of the Ranger net, maybe a minute after this, and Halak was just kind of sprawled out and just doing everything he can, just kind of improvising to keep the puck out of the net. This was all happening in the first 6 or 7 minutes of this game. So Halak really stood tall early, kept the Rangers in it. That was kind of the theme for the night, and obviously gave them a chance to come back. One other save that I wanted to highlight here, because this one was big. This happened in the second period. This was, maybe a minute after the Rangers had given up the lead. They were down 2-1 at this point. And as I mentioned, the Canes were basically skating circles around the Rangers in the second period. And the Canes had a chance to potentially go up 3-1 here. Adam Fox, just inside the Carolina blue line, basically overskated the puck, resulted in a rush for the Canes. And then you had Necas. He got behind everybody, and Halak just stayed with him all the way, made a really nice save to keep the puck out, keep the score at 2-1 Canes instead of 3-1 Canes. And look, I'm stating the obvious here that you don't want to give up a goal in that situation. I think that's even more true against a typically defensively responsible Carolina Hurricane team. They actually made a couple of mistakes that led to some Ranger goals in this one. But, man, you don't want to be playing from behind against this team at all, and certainly not by multiple goals. So, I mean, hey, if the goal is scored there, maybe the Rangers come back and win 6-3. But you never know. The goal scored there. Maybe the Canes are feeling good. They get into playing their game. They shut the Rangers down, and they end up going away with the win here. You never know how it's going to shake out and how one goal can affect everything. Huge save by Jaroslav Halak in that situation there. I figure we could pretty much call it there. I just wanted to leave you guys with one really positive thought here. So the Hurricanes coming into this game had an 8-point lead on the Rangers. The Canes are in first, the Rangers are in third. This win by the Rangers, and the fact that it's a regulation win helps us as well, because if they had won in overtime, the Canes would still get a point. But the fact that the Rangers won this in regulation, that lead is now down to 6 points for the Canes. And if the Canes had won in regulation, it would be all the way up to 10. So obviously, these division matchups are absolutely huge. Rangers have beaten the Canes twice this season, which is awesome. And obviously a nice couple of days here for the New York Rangers, striking a trade and defeating the Kraken, the first place Kraken, and the first place Carolina Hurricanes by a total score of 12-5. So that's big time, and obviously stepping up, winning 5 straight overall, and Rangers just cooking right now. Great to see. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. And definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time.